If you ever find yourself on a hill near the Spanish city of Almeria, you'll see a unique sight. The hillside opens up to a panoramic view of the sea, of plastic, engulfing the surrounding plains. Towns and villages rise above this sea like islands, and the sea itself is so vast that it can even be seen from space. For an astronaut in orbit, however, this part of Almeria province looks faded. The sunlight reflects off 143 square miles of plastic sheeting. It's all a man-made landscape, the only one of its kind in the world. It's simply impossible to use this much plastic without harming the environment, but the authorities in Spain are turning a blind eye. What's going on? And who's profiting from this sea of plastic? You can't figure this out without some coffee. Just an unobtrusive reminder to do that little thing under the video, and thanks to everyone who understands my wish to remain anonymous. The idea that the Great Wall of China and the pyramids of Giza can be seen from space has fascinated humanity for centuries. Well, since the moment humanity could actually look at Earth from space, of course, but both the pyramids and the wall blend in with their surroundings, making them hard to distinguish without special tools. The sea of plastic in Almeria, however, is a totally different story. You don't even have to look closely, it's simply impossible to miss. The sea of plastic looked so bizarre that shots of it were used at the very beginning of the movie Blade Runner 2049, and the landscape really does look futuristic. But what's hidden behind it? Or rather, under it? The answer's actually simple. It's greenhouses. On the coastal plain of Campo de Dalias, there are thousands and thousands of greenhouses. They stretch between the towns of El Ejido and La Mojonera, and it's the biggest concentration of greenhouses. There are others too. You can also see significant clusters of greenhouses further south in Motril and to the north in Níjar. They're also present in other areas of southern Spain. But the province of Almeria, as I already said, is unique in its own way because here you'll find around 143 square miles of greenhouses. That's more than the area of, well, for example, Malta. But where did it all begin? Not so long ago, back in the 60s, Almeria in the southeast of Spain was an extremely poor province. The land here was so barren that it was used for filming westerns, trying to recreate the look of American deserts. And it's not surprising, since Almeria is known as one of the driest places in Europe. At that time, the Campo de Dalias region was mostly covered with shrub vegetation, pastures, and a few small patches of seasonal crops. Practically nothing else grew here. But then people gradually began to cultivate the soil, which had a layer of sand from nearby beaches. After the sand, mulch was added, and then in the 1950s and 1960s, plastic came along. At first, farmers aimed to use it to protect the soil and plants from damaging winds, but before long, they figured out that crops grown under plastic were way more productive than those planted in the open air. This was mainly because the soil stayed warm and held on to more moisture. Aha, thought the farmers, and the dry, barren region started turning into Europe's fruit and vegetable basket. Today, they grow tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, cucumbers, eggplants, melons, watermelons, and salads here, and all of it's in huge quantities. From October 2021 to 2022, the greenhouses in Almeria produced over 3.5 million tons of horticultural products worth about 2.79 billion euro, just over $3 billion. About 3/4 of the harvested produce was exported to 13 countries in the European Union and the UK. Naturally, such production volumes could not help but impact the region's economy. Since the 1960s, the constantly expanding greenhouse cluster has brought relative prosperity to Almeria. Today, greenhouses are the main source of local pride and income. And the secret lies in the clear skies, groundwater, and plastic. A huge amount of plastic. To make this plastic work, it's stretched over wooden posts or metal frames and secured with wire. Overall, yeah, I guess that's it. It's a really simple design. But the clear plastic does an excellent job. It traps heat and maintains humidity. This allows for harvesting a month earlier than in open ground and also earlier than in other regions. The harvest in Almeria starts in December and lets the plants from fall-winter plantings grow until March. This way, the yield is way higher than the so-called norm. Some studies even show that conditions inside greenhouses provide yields that are 30 times higher than other farming methods. That's why this kind of farming is sometimes called intensive, although I'd call it, damn, that's impressive farming. Actually, there's nothing really unusual about this method, just a hot, sunny climate combined with hydroponics. Sunny rays are partly reflected off plastic canopies, but some still get through to the greenhouse. As a result, sunlight energy is focused in a very limited space and plants grow really fast. In comparison, in open spaces, sunlight only touches the ground once, and that's it. Plus, it's much easier to control humidity and carbon dioxide levels in the greenhouse. Overall, it's no surprise that the use of greenhouses quickly became popular in the following decades, especially considering innovations like hydroponics and artificial soil. By the way, hydroponic irrigation that can be controlled by computers also means that water is used as efficiently as possible. Considering we're talking about farming in this dry part of Spain, that's a pretty big plus. Yet, in spite of the dry climate, Almeria can surely be regarded as a perfect spot for this type of greenhouse agriculture. It's warm here, really sunny, but at the same time pretty windy, and the wind ensures proper CO2 circulation in the greenhouses. There's even a study that showed Spanish greenhouses use 22 times less energy than Dutch ones, since they rely on sunlight and warmth instead of depending on artificial sources for both. And the ability to produce such large amounts of food year-round at minimal costs allows them to sell it at affordable prices. Yeah, and the costs for building greenhouses, as you've already figured out, aren't high because there's really not much to do there. You can whip up such a greenhouse yourself in no time, and the main material will still be plastic. The main problem farmers face is lack of water. Since Almeria is a very dry area, it's practically impossible to grow food here without technology. And just so you don't think I'm bringing up the dryness for no reason, here, it's officially the lowest amount of rainfall in Europe. In Almeria, there aren't even any rivers and very little surface water. The average annual rainfall here is only about 10.3 inches, and it's roughly this much. In some months, like July, there might not be any rain at all. For comparison, in the central part of Spain, closer to the north, the average annual rainfall is 17 inches, almost double that, but still very little. In the warm and dry city of Barcelona, about 24.2 inches of rain falls each year. Naturally, Spain is no stranger to such conditions. In the past, agriculture was specifically adapted to the dry climate. Farmers specialized in the Mediterranean trinity, olives, grapes, and wheat, which require little water and can easily withstand droughts. However, today's greenhouses focus on non-native crops like tomatoes and watermelons, which now need more water. Some of it has been sourced from underground. The discovery of aquifers in the 1940s became one of the factors that led to the agricultural boom in Almeria. Groundwater reserves made it possible to quickly access what seemed to be an abundant supply of water necessary for large-scale crop cultivation. And they started growing crops. But soon a problem arose. The region swiftly started depending on groundwater as its main source because, well, there aren't many other sources around. Today, aquifers account for over 80% of the water used in farming across Almeria. If you've seen our other videos, you know that aquifers get replenished by rainfall. But there's not enough rain in Almeria, so the reserves are depleting faster than they can recover. Here's how much the water level has dropped in recent years. Maybe it's not super clear in the picture, but trust me, the situation is not great. Environmental groups are already raising concerns about the overuse of groundwater resources. If aquifers run dry, it could take centuries for water reserves to recover. Just so you know, by 1985, the Spanish Water Commission had already warned that the aquifers were in bad condition. In 2004, the authorities officially stated that the Níjar aquifer had reached a state of overexploitation. Then there was a 2014 study that showed that without radical measures, it could be depleted within 10 to 15 years. But it's almost 2025 already. There are more and more greenhouses, and they consume more water every year too. Ignoring the problem doesn't help at all here. Apart from depletion, pollution of these waters poses a threat as well. Firstly, there's a sharp increase in salinity triggered by seawater intrusion, which happens when coastal aquifers are excessively tapped. Secondly, fertilizer runoff brings nitrates into the water. Overall, all this makes you worry about the local biodiversity and the quality of drinking water. It does sound quite alarming. But at the same time, greenhouses can help regulate the climate of the region. What? Yeah. The bright white plastic can reflect sunlight back into space and effectively cool the province. And this isn't just some hypothetical idea. Back in 2008, scientists conducted a study and found something strange. Although the overall temperature in this part of Spain had risen, in Almeria it had dropped a bit. Researchers from the University of Almeria have figured this out. They found that the surface albedo of the region, the fraction of sunlight reflected from a body, increased by almost 10% between 1983 and 2006. This is exactly due to the reflectivity of the greenhouses. This likely helped cool Almeria by 32.54 degrees Fahrenheit for the decade, compared to a 32.9 degree Fahrenheit increase in the rest of the region. Sure, later studies have been less convincing about the cause of this mild cooling, but the reasoning seems to make sense. Unfortunately, it seems humanity still hasn't figured out how to use plastic in a way that doesn't harm anyone. Today, most of the plastic used in greenhouses is 0.07-inch thick polyethylene made at local factories in Almeria. It lasts about 3 to 4 years, and then it needs to be replaced, which costs around $10,000 or $11,000 per 2 acres, including materials and labor. The region is considered a hot spot for biodiversity, but many of its local plants aren't doing so well. I mean, out of about 24 local endemic plants, 6 are endangered. The situation isn't great. Indeed, greenhouse gardening in Almeria is located close to protected natural territories. These reserves, many of which are part of the EU's Natura 2000 network, contain priority habitats and species like migratory birds. Overall, reserves offer us all significant services because they combat erosion, help replenish groundwater, and things like that. But as you might have guessed, greenhouses continue to expand, and protected areas are in real danger. But what about plastic waste disposal? It's estimated that the greenhouse complex in Almeria produces around 33,500 tons of plastic waste every year. You can see this volume on the map, and it's not even about the greenhouses, but about a dump where plastic waste is left out in the open. Here's one of almost 400 illegal dump sites that activists have pointed out. And don't think this is just a random occurrence, because some of these dumps have been around for 5 years or more. Do the authorities know? Sort of. Activists officially notified them about 198 illegal dumps, but only 11 have been cleaned up. The others still have plastic just lying around, and that's not how it should be. According to the law, local greenhouse owners must dispose of or recycle plastic waste through official channels, but illegally dumped plastic waste is impossible to trace, so people just take advantage of their impunity. And plastic is gradually spreading. It's already been found blocking riverbeds, ending up in the sea, or swallowed by birds and other land species. Once a sperm whale washed up dead on the coast of Almeria, and 37 pounds of plastic were found in its digestive system. Mostly greenhouse plastic. And with all this in mind, I want to remind you that the water supply is running out. This is a Spanish village where water is really run out, and the locals had to abandon their homes. And there are only going to be more examples like this. If groundwater actually runs out, then these events will be catastrophic in both environmental and socioeconomic terms. The downfall of small and large farms could lead to widespread turmoil, not just for millions of farm workers, but also in other sectors: transport and logistics, construction, cafes and bars, retail and banking. It will affect literally everyone. Moreover, Europe will lose a significant food source, and the Spanish authorities are doing nothing, despite 30 years of warnings. It seems the only possible way to prevent a disaster is the so-called National Hydrological Plan, which will unite Spain through inter-basin water transfers. In practice, this means, well, probably exactly what you thought: taking water from one area of Spain and transferring it to another. They say this will unite the country, just like the railroad did for the United States. The idea of transferring water has been discussed for several decades, and there's finally some progress here. We'll soon be able to see what these discussions lead to. What about plastic? Well, the fruit and vegetable sector in Almeria is doing its best to change the image of the sea of plastic, but it's not a quick or easy process. As is often the case, it's much easier to do damage than to fix it. One way is to stimulate biodiversity, for example, by introducing hedges where greenhouses are already set up. These hedges consist of perennial plants of different sizes that are well adapted to the environment. Moreover, species are specifically chosen to bloom at different times, so beneficial insects will come throughout the year. The benefits of these living hedges, creating whole green corridors, can be seen at the Resikland project site, where, despite the summer heat, local plant species add color and shade to the landscape. Sometimes these hedges are dotted with wooden boxes that serve as shelters for the native geckos. Overall, for this area to remain suitable for living creatures, the sea of plastic should become striped? White with green, you know? However, they need to solve the problem of landfills, and this part's a bit simpler since the greenhouse covering is 100% recyclable. That is, the worn-out films can be processed into new films for greenhouses or any other plastic products. A significant amount of plastic is already being recycled successfully, but not all farmers are on board with that. Switching plastic for something more eco-friendly isn't really an option since the only alternative is glass, which is way more expensive and requires sturdier, tougher construction to ensure the greenhouse stays up and doesn't collapse. Overall, the only solution for now is recycling. It doesn't sound too bad. Yes, and the whole plastic sea is a good thing, despite the plastic. Active agriculture has brought a lot of development to Almeria and provided economic opportunities for many residents. And wealth is distributed pretty evenly. The profit doesn't just line the pockets of a few wealthy landowners like often happens in other countries because the land here is often family-owned. This gives landowners a good life with plenty of opportunities. That's why many farmers take pride in their work and value it. There are, of course, problems. Migrant workers don't always get decent pay, often lack proper housing, work hard and long hours, but this is definitely a topic for another video. Sea of plastic in China. Let's kick off this news with a fun fact. As of now, greenhouses cover over 5,000 square miles of land around the globe, which is about the size of Connecticut. Just think of all the produce being grown in them, and the increase in greenhouse space probably won't slow down. Only 40 years ago, they occupied just 116 square miles. There's been particularly impressive development of greenhouses in China, which now holds 60% of the world's greenhouse farms. You can spot these structures on agricultural land across various provinces, but the highest concentration of greenhouses in China and in the world is in Weifang, Shandong province in the northeast. Here, greenhouses take up over 316 square miles. What used to be wide open fields is now literally a bunch of plastic. And everything, of course, comes down to the cost. Plastic's cheap and it works. What else do you need? Trendy plastic. Yes, this stuff is also trendy. The plastic we've been talking about in today's video has spread so much that it even made its way into clothing. The Agrocostura project is a fashion collection that reflects the history of Almeria. How? It's pretty simple. The clothes are made using the same materials found in greenhouses, just mixed with fabrics. And it's all done by hand, which additionally refers to farm labor. But how did they even come up with such an idea? The thing is, some of the plastic used in building greenhouses ends up unused and just gets stored. And we all know what happens next. Greenhouse gases, global warming, and all that. So the Agrocostura project finds a way to put these leftovers to use by making clothes out of them. This gives materials a second life, preventing them from ending up in a landfill for years to come. There's something missing in these photos. Perhaps they should include some tomatoes. Revolutionary struggle. We talked a lot today about greenhouses and plastic, discussing their pros and cons, but there's one fact that elevates greenhouse growing above all other methods. Farmers who use greenhouses lose the least amount of their crops. This success is mainly attributed to the biological pest control techniques that avoid chemical use. See for yourself. A recent study found that 96% of farmers use this method of protection for growing peppers, while among tomato farms the number goes up to 71%. As for cucumbers, 60% of growers use biological pest control methods, and all of this is happening in Spain. The country has some grand plans for the future. They're planning to rotate crops, plant only pest-resistant varieties, and carefully clean their equipment. They want to do everything naturally. So it looks like Spain is planning to completely give up on chemicals? Well, not quite. Following EU regulations, Spain uses a range of pest control methods but emphasizes the need for biological methods. In the greenhouses of Almeria, farmers are improving organic farming using insects and pheromones to protect their crops from pests. Chemical pesticides are only used as a last resort when other biological methods stop working. A huge greenhouse. Novogric, known for its cutting-edge developments in agronomy, has launched a unique project that's truly impressive. 2 greenhouses have been built on a farm near Almerimar, but these aren't just any greenhouses, they are massive structures. One covers an area of 183,000 square feet, while the other spans 32 acres. To give you an idea of the scale, an average greenhouse in Almeria covers only 19 acres. While implementing their ambitious project, the Novogric team faced a number of challenges. Among them were the construction of unconventional structures for this area, adapting to the unique landscape, as well as the need to take local weather conditions into account, including strong wind gusts. But they managed to pull it off, and now the country will be provided with even more vegetables year-round. And it's not just words. The engineers did everything to produce quality products. Inside the greenhouse, advanced systems have been implemented to monitor and regulate key parameters like light levels, temperature, humidity, and even radiation. Vertical fans and screens help fine-tune these metrics. The fertigation and hydroponic systems built into the greenhouse optimize the watering and feeding process for the plants. In short, they really went all out there. Did you remember to hit a certain button? See you later.